Hi everybody, Adam Steele from Hot Pole Studios here, and today this voiceover hopefully sounds rich, full, and really nice. And as you can see from the headphones, I'm monitoring this zero latency in real time. This is just about the most overkill way to get my home voiceover setup for where I'm doing the mixing streams and that kind of thing from home to sound as good as it can be, because I've been a little bit dissatisfied recently. So let's check out the ART voice channel, which this is not a sponsored video. I bought this for the home setup, and I'm going to talk about why I got it, why I'm spending so much, and what it does for me, and some of the things that it can do that make it sound like this with nothing done in editing. Stay tuned. So I've had a few issues recently with my setup at home. Not issues, just niggles, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, honestly, that I've been doing these mixed streams. I've been using a Shure MV7 microphone, which is great. It's simple. It's got the inbuilt compression and EQ and all that kind of stuff. But I've not been integrating it into my setup very well. It's got USB output, and I've been using that, and that's been feeding a channel into OBS. And that's great, but I can't hear that. With it being USB, there are a couple of ways to monitor it. One is through the headphone jack on the microphone itself, which I'm not using because I'm already using separate interfaces, usually from Audient, but from other companies as well, depending on what I'm doing day to day. And if I do monitor through software like OBS, that incurs a significant latency delay, which gives me kind of a brain-muddling speech jammer effect. And that really isn't helpful. So I thought, well, okay, let's just get a different sounding microphone, and there are a few. And like this that I'm using right now is the Sennheiser MKH416 shotgun mic, which is a fantastic sounding microphone. It's one of my favorites. I use it on every film shoot that I do, and I'll probably be using it on voiceover from now on, but I've got a few more choices I'm going to go through just to see, especially now I've got this, what I can do. So this is not just a preamp, this is an everything box. This has a compressor to make it so that when I go loud, it doesn't deafen everybody. It's got a de-esser in there, which I might use an extra de-esser. I'm thinking I might on the processing on the way out in OBS. I'll see about that in the edit, because the de-esser here is okay, but I mean, without it, it's really quite aggressive sounding. There is an expander gate, which I'm using in expander mode. If I turn that off, you'll suddenly hear a lot of background noise in here from the cameras and from the lights and that kind of thing. I can really hear myself breathing and that kind of thing, as well as the background noise. It's quite unpleasant, but with it on, that all just melts away. Fantastic. And then there is a 4-band EQ, which I'm using to take a couple of the nasty kind of low mid and high mid honks out. And I thought I would end up lifting the high end, but I'm not. And I am giving it a little bit of a low end bump, because I do like the sound of a big full low end on a voiceover. And so that's really nice. I've got the attack and release and everything set on the compressor, so it's fairly aggressive. I think it's an optical style compressor, but it's not a valve opto. I might be wrong on that, but it is an inbuilt compressor, and you can see the compression and gate lights going crazy there. It's got a VU meter, which is not the most useful, but it's doing something and it's pretty. But below it is the bit that's really useful for me. This is a meter before the inbuilt DAC. This thing has digital to audio in there, and that's what really caught my attention, because partly it's got a USB out on it, so I can use that if I want it, but also partly it's got ADAT or optical out. So it can do SPDIF or ADAT depending on what you're feeding with this. It's got word clock in and out, so I can sync this to a larger system. It does also have coaxial SPDIF and AES outputs, so depending on what equipment you've got, if you've got a spare socket somewhere, like the RME RADAT that I use up until recently had a spare AES input, I could take a feed of the word clock into this, feed the AES output, so then I get a digital copy of what's happening on this with no more analog in the path anywhere, and that then wouldn't take away from the other channels that I was using. Where I'm planning to use this in my home setup is with the Audient ID14 Mark II, which is a great little interface, two really clean preamp channels that I already kind of have earmarked. One is for the input from the 2Notes Captor X, which is fed by all my amps, and the other one is the output from the Tech 21 Landmark amp, which is my go-to bass amp. So those are already kind of spoken for, but it does have an optical input. Now on a bigger system, I would use whatever the interface is as the master clock and send word clock out to this, and then use this knob here to go to the external sample rate at 24-bit. This can do 16-bit. Why you would want that, I don't know, given that the 24-bit is kind of the standard these days. But the other thing you can do is you can have this run at any sample rate that you desire and use this as the master clock, which with the Audient is kind of what I'm going to have to do, because with anything that doesn't have any way of sending a digital clock out, a lot of smaller interfaces are like this, like the ID14 Mark II. You then, if you run any digital in, have to have that extra box run the digital clock, and that stops any kind of stuttering, scraping, glitching effects, because nobody wants that. But the fact that I can do that, I can just set this to what I usually run is 48 kilohertz 24-bit. If I'm working on a mix that someone sent me in 44 or 96 or whatever, I can just click this and then have that adjusted. Once I move to another interface, which I probably will do in the future, that's got word clock output, I'll just set that on external and that's then done. But the reason that I'm using this with the Audient interface and not the USB out is that inside the Audient interface's own mixer, I can live with zero latency have the digital output of this fed into the same headphones that I'm doing the mix on. Zero latency means zero kind of mental distraction. I can hear my voice well enough to know that if there are any background noises or if there's any bumping of the mic going on or anything isn't quite right, I'll be aware of it at the time and be able to fix it very quickly. And also that'll help keep my sanity and stop me from kind of speaking too loud and shouting. I'm probably talking under my breath a little bit here because I've just realised that my headphone volume is a little bit loud. But that's something I'll just change the balance of that. But also, I'll be able to set the output level on here so that at zero, at unity gain with the mix that I'm doing, I'll be able to be heard clearly over the mix. So that's why I got this. Let's talk about price though, because it wasn't cheap. They're about £500 or $550 new. I got this on eBay for $400, but still, it's a lot. And you can get, like, you know, I don't like saying it, but you can get Behringer, the old rack gear from them for way less. They do compressors and gates and EQs and stuff that you can get at very affordable prices if you want to kind of go this route, but don't want to spend huge amounts of money. One of the reasons that I did decide to spend a significant amount of money on this is hopefully the be-all and end-all of my vocal chain for that mix room. Just done. So that it will sound, hopefully, production ready as it goes out. Especially for live videos, you can't really mix it later. But what I was doing was using plugins like Voxformer to do the EQ and de-essing and everything live, but I couldn't hear it. So if it wasn't right, let's say I change microphones or change mic position or anything, I had to go back and spend time doing all that over and over and over again. Nobody wants to do all that several times. But yeah, I hopefully have the definitive thing. It even has insert points so that I can have anything else. Like I was saying, I don't know if the de-esser does enough. I could get an external de-esser and put it in the insert loop, and that's then done. I could have an extra compressor that does a different thing, or a different, like a Pultec style EQ or whatever, in the insert loop of this fully analog before it goes out digital, if I so desired. That's a lot of money. I'm not spending that money. That's crazy talk. This sounds great as it is, but the options are there. And also the analog to digital converters in here. It's a 2-channel AD, which this, of course, is only using 1 channel. There is an insert point on here, so if you've got a second audio source, you can then plug that straight into here and kind of hijack the digital signal. So I could then have 2 sounds coming out from here to the Audient interface or whatever other interface I'm using. Just opens up my channel count a little bit, you know. So let's talk about the features, because even though that's last, I mean, I've already set this up with this microphone, how I think I'm going to want it set. I might have to tweak this in when I get this home and play with it a little more, listen back to this video and probably go, change this, change that. But I can't see the controls particularly well from where I'm sat. I'm kind of sat to the side of this, but I'll try my best to give a decent sound and do what we can. So let's start all the way from the left. So the gain knob, it's a gain knob. It does what it's supposed to. There is a pad if you've got a really hot mic or a really hot input. There's a switch for the insert, which if I do that, I'll probably turn the sound off. No, 1 2 1 2 1 2 sounds different with insert. Don't like that, but I don't know. There's phantom power, which does what it says, and there is a low cut, which I've enabled so that any kind of rumble from the stand is gone. So we don't get any subsonic stuff. This is a valve preamp. It's got 2 modes, high and normal. So apparently high is kind of cleaner, less tube-like. I'm going to switch it to normal mode now. Apparently it takes about 20 seconds to change, so here we go. So this is normal mode. I'm not sure if I'm hearing much difference. I might actually like a little bit more of this valviness on my voice. So, yeah, apparently it's cleaner and less valvy on the high plate voltage mode. So I think I'm going to go with this one, actually. I kind of like it. What have we got after that? We've got an impedance knob, which this is a phantom-powered RF bias microphone. I don't think that's going to make much difference. If I change that, yeah, no audible difference because of the way that this microphone works. It's already kind of feeding a signal out with active electronics. But if you've got something like an SM7B or a ribbon mic or something like that, you can kind of darken and thicken the tone and change things around a little bit because that changes how it reacts to the microphone. Sometimes you'll find on dynamic mics that there's kind of a nasty ringing sound almost to the way that it's set. And the cure for that is more cowbell. No, the cure for that is to change the impedance until the circuit isn't resonating, so to speak. And then if it sounds a little dark, there's an EQ section, brighten it up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Then there is the compressor, which of course has ratio, threshold, attack, release, fairly standard controls. I've got it going at about 2.5 to 1, so not ultra limiting, but it's really quite a low threshold, so it's compressing a little bit most of the time. And the attack and release are set so that I'm letting quite a bit of the initial kind of thing through, but the release is quick enough that it's not just staying down forever. There is also a de-esser, which I'm using quite a lot. I've got it on maximum, and it's down at kind of a 3K range. I might take that a little higher, depending on what works best. I've been trying to sweep that round, see which frequency is the most effective, but without it, it's t-t-t-t-t, and with it's just a little bit more bearable, I think. We already talked about the plate voltage, and then we've got the expander gate, which I did at the start without any expansion. Because of the compression, we can hear the background stuff. It's not great. You can hear things like scratching, keyboard clacks, that kind of thing. If I whack the expander up, that kind of thing's way quieter. Everything around me, the room reverb falls away. The gate is really aggressive. So if I turn it to a gate mode, yeah, you can hear how that just kind of cuts. That's too much for me. That's quite disconcerting. Whereas the expander doesn't completely remove the signal. It just gently kind of goes, and takes it away, which is useful for me. Then there's the EQ, which you can have it before or after the compressor. In a vocal mode, I tend to have it after the compressor because I want to do things like bump the low end, which would make the compressor behave weirdly. So that's why I'm doing it this way around. There's low and high. You can choose what frequency points they're at. I've added a little bit of low end there, but you can really go radio FM, radio, and really kind of kill that. I've taken a little high end off, and like I said, I've found a couple of honky frequencies like that, and just taken them down 1, 2 honky radio honk, and just dip them out a little. There's an EQ bypass, so you can just at one click of a button tell whether you did the right thing or not with, this is how it sounded originally, which isn't bad, but it's a little bit kind of honky and full in the mid-range, whereas now it's, I think, more radio ready. Over on this side, we've got, like I said earlier, the sample rate thing, so you can change what this is going out for the master clock, or whether it's using the word clock. Through the external or ADAT. There is actually an ADAT input on here. I don't know whether that would then feed the audio circuitry, but you could use it just to feed the clock. If you've got something like an Audient ID44, which has got audio out and in on ADAT, you can use ADAT just as a clock signal if you like, but word clock is preferred. Then there's the output level, which does affect this down here, which is the DAC, which is giving me some overall levels and then a push of a peak. And sometimes I seem to be just about clipping it, so I'll be playing around with that. VU meter's less useful, but there you go. And of course, the last button is you can change whether this is an ADAT digital signal or whether it's an SPDIF digital signal. And as long as your interface on the other side is set to SPDIF or ADAT mode, so that they match, then happy days, and make sure your clock source is good and all that kind of thing. I've got videos about digital timing and clock sources that you can check out if you need to. But yeah, let's now try this with a couple of different microphones. Stay tuned. Alright, so I've switched to the SM7B, the old litmus test, and I've had to crank the preamp gain to full and played around with the impedance. If I turn the impedance down, you should find that this now sounds not only quieter, but kind of darker and less forceful, whereas when I turn the impedance up, it really brings in a certain kind of air and a something about the way that it interacts. So that's probably the way that I would leave it. So yeah, I had to crank that and turned up the output gain a little bit as well to match. But yeah, the tube voltage on normal seems to suit this microphone. It sounds right. These S's were not too overpowering to begin with, I don't think. The low end bump, definitely, there you go. Oh yeah, you can really push that and get that radio effecty thing. I like it. I've just noticed the EQ was actually pre-compressor because I'm an idiot. So there we go. I've now changed that so that I can add more low end, and that will not cause the pumping, because I could hear a little bit of pumping there, pumping, and yeah, that's a decent sound. I don't think it would have made too much difference on the other mic, the 416, but on this one, especially when I did the p kind of thing, that was really causing it to go kind of weird where I do it the other way. Not a big fan of that stuffy kind of thing that it's doing with the compressor there, but here it's leaving me some clarity, and I can add a little bit of top end there as well. So I can get clarity out of this. Oh, and I turn the expander all the way off. If I turn some of that back on now, there we go. So the background noise that was already kind of less sensitive because of the way that this microphone behaves is now just out of there. this is a really nice kind of vocal setup for the home stream. I might use this instead of the 416 because I know that the 416 I use in filming all the time, so it would be a pain for me to keep switching them, whereas this one sounds kind of radio ready because of the EQ kind of scoopy stuff and the compression there, which isn't doing all that much. If I bring the ratio up a little, I can hear a lot more compression on that, and then I can just back the threshold off a little bit. I think, yeah, this mic seems to suit a more aggressive ratio on the compression. How about that? Last but not least, I'm going to go for the Lewitt 940 valve microphone. Let's try that. And last but not least, I've got the Lewitt 940 valve microphone in front of me, and my word, this sounds good. I mean, I think I'm spoilt for choice here, but I think I'm going to be putting the Lewitt in my setup. Might need to get a proper pop filter for this. I do believe there is a magnetic one somewhere that I can get that will do the job for me, that's a metal pop filter, but that will solve the only issue there. I mean, this sounds huge. I mean, I've got a low cut on the preamp already. There is the option to turn that off and use the low cut in the power supply for the microphone. And yeah, I mean, the SM7B sounded great. The 416 was a little much on my voice, but also potentially great. This is, yeah, next level stuff. I might even make the tube voltage normal for this one to see what even more valviness can do, because there we go. This is a, I'll take a little bit more of the expander because I can hear some background noise there. And I think that is my conclusion, that one of these microphones is going to be used with this in my setup. And on the way at the moment, I've got one of those Elgato low-profile boom arms, because I'm kind of fed up as well of having a boom arm hanging down in my face. So they now do kind of a low one. I'm not sponsored by Elgato. That's just something I'm getting because I've seen it and it looks useful. But it's on back order, unfortunately, because everyone else has looked at it and gone, that's really useful. So that is something I'm going to be getting for the next time you see me recording in my Studio B. But yeah, this has been a video all about a box that I spent far too much money on. Thank you everybody for watching. Please like the video if you thought it was amusing at least. Subscribe to the channel, that definitely helps us to grow. You can consider sponsoring us on Patreon to do more mad stuff like this. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye everyone.